I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I can no longer hear you. That storm might have kicked in.
Doug's back there clapping. What the heck? Anyway, guys, welcome to the show. He totally threw me off in the background. I'm sorry. Today we have a great show for you. We have Doug with Single Malt Frontiers, Demi Taste, whatever you want to call him. We got the man, the myth, the legend himself here. And I know what you're thinking. This is two guys, right? Like, where's the other guy? Yeah, he's not here. This is Doug specific tonight. And we're going to get into everything about Doug. And I want to know the ins and outs. If he has possibly 11 toes, who knows? But we're going to figure all that out tonight. And we have a couple pours lined out. It's going to be great. So, Doug, I'm going to start out with the question that I ask everybody. If you ate supper, dinner, whatever they call it, if you ate it, what did you eat?
Well, I had oatmeal, but I wouldn't call it dinner. I had an early lunch, and it's 5 p.m., and I need something in my belly.
Got it.
Not even fancy oatmeal, just instant oatmeal. Pop it in the microwave, we're done. Yeah, just a snack.
Whatever works, right? Whatever gets the nutrients in your body so that you can actually function for a couple more hours. So my wife is an excellent cook, and she made some chicken breasts with some broccoli. She made the kids Alfredo. I can't eat Alfredo, so too much dairy, too much, all the stuff. And so I just had a chicken breast and broccoli, and it was really good. So that's where we're at. Yeah.
That's what I want right now. So my work has been doing this like conference thing this week. It's like kind of a little internal conference. Mm-hmm. And they've had free breakfast and free lunch and a free espresso cart and free afternoon snack dessert things. And take advantage of all that free food. The problem is I've been eating like crap this week. And what I really need is a big old plate of chicken and broccoli. That's what I need right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
to be fair, they've had salad at almost every one of these meals. So it's not that bad, but there's still way more carbs that I normally eat. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, exactly.
I think carbs. I'm having Panda Express leftovers later.
Oh, well, there you go, right? I mean, why wouldn't you, right? Okay, so we're going to get into our first dram, and then I want you to tell me the story of this dram because it has to do with your whiskey journey. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so the first dram we're getting into, and I don't have the stinking bottle anymore. I threw it away.
All right. I'll demonstrate with the box and everything.
We got the Yamazaki 12, and now this is obviously a Japanese whiskey, 12-year-old age stated 43%, correct?
Yeah. Do they have Yeah, it's 43%. I was wondering if they have a 40% variation somewhere on the international.
I'm sure they do.
This sure they do. Yeah.
Okay, so I only have a sample. But this is some Yamazaki. So tell us the story of why Yamazaki.
Yeah. So Yamazaki is not the first whiskey I ever drank, but it's the first whiskey that I would say threatened to turn me into a whiskey collector, but definitely turned me into a whiskey enthusiast. So, you know how they say like bourbon is like your dad's drink or your grandpa's drink or anything, and like I kind of agree with that in a way, in my case, but not in like a negative way. Like I really enjoy having a glass of bourbon with my dad. Mm-hmm. But in all those years of having the occasional bourbon, I never like connected with it in a way that like I wanted to know everything about it. It's just like, we're just going to sit around and sip some wild turkey or whatever. We're making dinner, we're doing a barbecue, whatever it is, we're having some bourbon. It was just like beer, I don't know all the nuances of every canned beer I've ever had. But it's just someone puts a beer in your hand and you drink it, right?
Absolutely.
I didn't actually drink all that early in my life. I didn't drink it all until I was 21. And I happened to be up in Seattle interviewing for a company, and I had a friend out here. His parents actually took me out and bought me my first glass of wine. It turns out I didn't really like wine, or at least my first shot at wine, I didn't really like wine.
Right.
I connected with beer a little bit more in the subsequent years and actually became kind of a beer enthusiast.
Okay.
And then the pandemic happened, and there was always this thing in the background where I thought, whiskey is like this cultural thing. People appreciate it. My like sort of media exposure to whiskey wasn't like alcohol abuse kind of thing. I think some people see it like that. They see like the portrayals of whiskey as being problematic in media,
Right.
but I saw it more as like this is a thing to be respected and enjoyed and relaxed with. And then I also saw that in my family as well, like Slavic family, uh, like brandies and that sort of thing, always kind of around. It's like it's a thing that people connect over. It's like there's cigars happening, whatever. Like I wasn't paying attention to all those details as a kid, but I loved hearing people talk about like what makes this brandy special or stuff like that. Tell me like, oh, brandy's like distilled wine, and like there's this other thing, whiskey is like distilled beer, and these little facts come out over time. It was always this thing that kind of had a mystique, but I never really thought much about.
Right.
So at some point, I really wanted to get into it, and pandemic happened. But I actually jumped the gun a little bit on like how did this Yamazaki 12 actually sort of come to my life? So after years of not really caring much and not drinking very much, I went on a trip to Japan. This was 2015. It was just a little bit after Yamazaki whatever had won international something something. I don't even
Right.
remember what it was now. But beat Scotch, right? Single malt from somewhere outside of Scotland that won the world, right? They got number one, and Yamazaki 12 was the accessible bottle that everybody was starting to go after. It was kind of hunting, right? So after 3 weeks in Japan, I hadn't managed to see it. I spent my last day in Tokyo going on a whiskey hunt. I was specifically looking for Yamazaki 12 because I wanted to go home with a bottle as a keepsake.
Right.
Had no idea what would happen in the subsequent decade. The prices going up and whatever. I think I got my first bottle of Yamazaki 12 for about $60.
Oh wow.
Took the whole bottle home, but we also bought a little sample and cracked it with my now wife and my friend who we'd all gone on this trip together. And was like, wow, that's like we've never had a whiskey before like that. Like all we've had is like bottom shelf bourbon, really.
Right.
And experiencing good whiskey for the very first time. And going like, wow, that's got like honey and orange peel and these cool notes that like I've never experienced a whiskey like that before. And bottom shelf bourbon, there's also kind of bottom shelf scotch, you get like Dewar's White Label stuff like that. Like all these things you sort of go like I understand that there's this cultural thing where everybody cares about whiskey, but I'm not seeing it, right? And then all of a sudden there's this whiskey that's like, oh, I see this, I understand, right? Happy to have it. So I should have a sip here.
You should.
See if those notes hold up, because I know this is not my first bottle of Yamazaki. In fact, I never drank my first bottle of Yamazaki.
Okay.
I gifted it to my
Why?
dad.
Okay. For good reason.
Yeah, I gifted it to my dad, and it actually got lost in the floods in Houston in I think it was 2017. The big flood where like tons of people lost their homes and everything.
Yeah.
So my childhood home got lost. And among many other things, and actually I regret the loss of the book collection a lot more than the fact that there was a whiskey that was under that murky water. But yeah, they made the right call in just ditching the bottle of whiskey, not trying to save it.
Yeah.
But I always felt like, okay, the problem there was we put this whiskey up on a pedestal, right? I told my dad all about how special this thing was. We should save it for a special occasion. I think he was trying to save it for my wedding, but we never like talked through the logistics of that. So it just never happened. And I said, okay, look, I'm buying you, like I'm into whiskey. Some fast forward many years later, I'm into whiskey now. I know it's more expensive, but I'm going to buy you a bottle of this whiskey and we're going to open it as soon as we see each other.
Amen. Yep.
Right. Actually, I gave him a whole bottle and then he came to visit me. So we opened mine. I bought myself one. I bought him one.
Right.
So we opened it up, sipped it, had a great time, finally got to have that whiskey. And then, like it was an interesting touch point. There's a lot of yada, yada, yadas in between. But as far as just this whiskey goes, there was a lot of whiskeys in between. Coming back to this whiskey was like, this was the thing that made me sort of fall in love with whiskey as a category.
Right.
But coming back to it, I go, this isn't that good. And like, that's almost like a super empowering thing in a way. That's like, wow, this thing that like in a certain context, this was the super special thing that really meant something to me, set me off on a journey. And coming back to it, I see how far I've come and how much other really cool stuff there is out there. And I can also say with full confidence, this ain't worth $130.
No,
right?
unfortunately
But with
not.
all the love for it, right? Like
Right.
I admire this bottle. When this bottle's gone, it's going to be gone. We get to have, the experience of the bottle of whiskey, all those touch points. I'm never going to like I don't have to have this bottle to remember what it's done for me.
Absolutely. And that really goes back to something that I and yourself have been talking about for a while now is, it's not so much about the whiskey. The whiskey's great. All of the parts inside of the whiskey are great, but it's more about that experiential thing that you're having with the whiskey. Like us having a dram of this said whiskey right now together, like that means way more to me than me just sitting in the house drinking it by myself, not
Right.
not really worried about it. This to me is opening it up, and yes, we can talk about the faults, we can talk about the good parts of it, we can talk about all the things, but that really doesn't matter because it's all about the experience and the time that you had. Like when you said you were drinking bourbon with your dad and you're barbecuing and didn't really care about the dram at all. And I'm not trying to say that's not what whiskey was made for, because it was in a way, but now I feel like we've put whiskey on such a pedestal, like you said, that we almost make it unattainable, and we don't want to open the dang bottle, right? We just
Yeah.
want to have it sit there and be, oh, it looks pretty on my shelf, instead of just drinking it. And then, like you said, with when a flood or something like that happens, or a fire, or something like that happens, it's gone. And then what is left? Rubble and no memory behind it. So open your bottles, drink the bottles, have fun with them, pour water in them, do whatever you want, but make a cocktail. But it's all about the experience and understanding that the people that made this whiskey want you to have that experience. They don't want you to just look at the bottle and then not drink it. Obviously, it was made for drinking. So that's part of the big one. So okay, so fast forward a little bit, you're into Yamazaki. You're getting into whiskey. Where
Yeah,
was
rather
the
we should rewind back to 2015 when I
okay?
first had Yamazaki, as opposed to I fast forwarded briefly just to
Okay,
the when I bought
okay,
the next bottle. But like
got
let's
it.
let's go back.
Let's go back. What really, obviously Yamazaki had a special place because it was the whiskey you were looking for. You weren't really into whiskey, but like this was the chase bottle that you were looking for, and then you acquired it. How did it kind of supersede from there? Because I know everybody's like, with goes into bourbon, or like for myself, I jumped headfirst into peaty scotches, and which isn't normal for a lot of people. I
Right.
know it might be normal for you as well, but we're in the cusp of being weird, so it's okay. But like I just don't. There's a lot of people that are like, I only drink this specific whiskey, and I feel like you and I both, you maybe a little less than me, are really open to any whiskey. Like I'll drink anything. Obviously, we've talked in the past, and you have a sensitivity to tannins, and I
Mhm.
totally understand that, because I've actually noticed that a little bit myself lately, drinking like a higher proof, really heavy, like a stag or something like that, that's super oaky. I've noticed that it kind of like, obviously I drink a very small amount, but it kind of like makes me feel a way where I'm like, I don't know, man, that's kind of like hurting my stomach a little bit. I don't know if maybe it's something. So anyway, go backwards, and then we'll continue to go forward.
Yeah. So back to 2015 was I would say between 2015 and 2020 was a pretty sparse, let's call it like an average whiskey drinker experience, like
Okay.
average, like average whiskey, like casual enthusiast kind of thing, where
Mm-hmm.
like the kind of person who's always got a nice whiskey at home and knows that it's nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know why it's nice. It's like a souvenir. You got a reason to have it, right? So Yamazaki was one of those whiskeys. It became a thing where getting a bottle of whiskey as a souvenir whenever I went on a trip was a thing that I did.
Right.
So somewhere in, I think it was 2017, I went to India for a wedding, and on the way back, we went through Dubai duty free, and they
Mm-hmm.
had a bottle of the Nika 12, which
Mm.
was a blended, malt and grain, like blended whiskey from the House of Nika. They don't make it anymore, which and I got it for, I think, again, like 60, 70, 80 bucks, who
Right.
knows. It's a beautiful decanter. I don't have it handy. It's over there somewhere, but I'm not sure where, so I'm not going to go grab it. Um that was one of those things where it's like, wow, like, okay, now I can see like people are really into like, this is a cool looking bottle. I want to have this out on display on the buffet table next to the dining table. When people come over after dinner, we're going to have a drink of this and it's going to be open because I, at that point, had learned the lesson from the lost bottle of Yamazaki, right?
Right.
It's going to be open. We're going to drink it slowly over time, but it's always going to be a thing that's like, we revere it. We have this awe for the thing that is the nice distilled whiskey thing.
Right.
And always making memories with people, right? Like I remember pretty much every gathering, every party where that bottle came out. And I never want to get rid of that decanter because it was a fixture in my life for years. And like in a good, like we dip into it when we're making a good memory kind of thing. Right. It's not about the whiskey. It's about the stuff that the whiskey witnessed, you know?
Yep.
Never put it like that before, but I like that.
Right. No, that's great.
So there was that. On one of these other trips, again, a nice duty-free purchase. I got a 2-pack of Macallan 15.
Okay.
Which I intended just to give as gifts. I gave one to my father-in-law. I was going to give one to my dad. It never happened, but instead it got open. He came to visit me. It got opened in my house. So it became my bottle. We actually, we killed it. It basically was 5 years since the first time we drank it together.
Wow.
And it was one of those things where, because this happened at some point, and by this, I mean a small version of this, right?
Right.
In 2020, so I just been like slowly acquiring these things and like waiting for the right time to open them. But there was always like, but we're going to open them, right? Mm-hmm. When we run out of the last good bottle of whiskey, we're going to open the next good bottle of whiskey. Right. We're not going to do this thing where we put it up on a pedestal and say, this shall not ever be opened. That's a dumb, I learned that the hard way, thankfully with not too much money down the drain, but like the poignancy of the lost opportunity to have those memories, you know? Mm-hmm. But we made up for it.
Right.
Yeah, the Macallan was the first Scotch I ever bought for myself after really severely bouncing off of Scotch, the Dewar's White Label. And kind of what brought me back to it was the fact that I'd gotten a single malt from Japan, which was supposedly better than Scotch, right? In my brain at the time. Mm-hmm. And then I got another Japanese whiskey. And then I said, okay, like I appreciate whiskey more. It's not as hard to drink as it used to be. We'll try buying another Scotch. Pandemic rolls around, and my normal craft beer drinking bar budget, I guess, not to mention restaurant budget, was all just sitting idle. And I'm like, well, you know, we've got, I don't know, like a pandemic bubble people. Like we had like 5 people that we like only saw each other. So we're like, yeah, let's make our own bar night kind of thing. Like we're gonna get together, we're gonna, I don't know, watch the Super Bowl or have a dinner party or whatever it is. And I just my sort of what I intended to do was make cocktails. I wanted, actually what I thought I wanted to get into was mixology.
Okay.
Right. I was thinking, okay, every time we get together, I'm gonna like add one ingredient to my bar cart and make a signature cocktail of the evening with that. And that's how we were going to make the memory association of that occasion with that drink.
Right.
And I was going to learn how to bartend. That was going to be my pandemic hobby. And what actually happened was I got into espresso and like making lattes and that sort of thing. And I got into neat spirits because as I was buying these ingredients, I found I don't really give a damn about Chambord or whatever. Like, what I care about is the good whiskey that I bought to go with it, or the good mezcal that I bought to go with it, or the good gin that I got to go with. I was into spirits. So actually gin and brandy almost fully captured me because I think whiskey I still didn't quite get. This surprises some people, especially like producers, where they're like, oh, we make a gin too, you wouldn't care. And I'm like, okay, let me tell you something.
Actually,
before I got into whiskey, I almost really got into gin. Because I think when you're not so, let's say, haughty about whiskey being this purist product, when you're just a person who enjoys the culinary arts, right? We're talking mixology, good gourmet food,
absolutely,
that sort of thing. Wanting to learn how to make these things and feeling like you could make these things, right? Gin is actually a much more accessible idea, or like anything that's like a herbal infused product, right? So like aquavit, ouzo, things like that. You can like understand where that's coming from. You're like, yeah, there's alcohol. Like alcohol is culturally significant. People drink to get drunk. There's all these things that are true about alcohol. But alcohol is also an excellent solvent, which is something you learn in chemistry class. And you can see how if you take these herbs that are good in food and you take alcohol that's a great solvent and you put them together, you can get this great tincture, infusion, whatever it is that you want to call it. And you can use that as an ingredient to make craft cocktails.
Right.
So I was into that kind of stuff. But then conversations happen. I joined Discord communities. I joined Reddit. I joined, whatever, found all this stuff. And people had all these cool things to say about all these different varieties of whiskey. And I just kind of bounced around with whiskey. It was a souvenir thing. But pandemic's on. I've got some money laying around. Somebody says, you should try Ardbeg 10. And I'd been watching Whiskey Tribe at that point. So I had an idea of what I was possibly going to get into there. So instead I went to my dad. By the way, I had my first ever cigar with Dad, and there was a scotch in there. I don't know what the scotch was, but that was part of the story in there too. One of the foundational experiences in whiskey. So I said, okay, maybe I don't go straight to Ardbeg 10 because I feel like I know, and I know that Johnny Walker Red Label, Johnny Walker Black Label had all, and Dewar's White Label had all been things that I tried, and they had a smoky-ish component to it, slight though it may be, as we definitely think of those things as being only kind of smoky at this point.
Right.
I went to my dad and I said, like, okay, so I know like some scotch is smoky, and like we had that one scotch when we had this cigar that wasn't smoky at all. Like we had it and then we had the cigar, so I knew it wasn't smoky. It was just like a contrast to the cigar, right?
Right.
And I asked him, like, what's a not smoky scotch that's meaningful to you? That I wanna like try to get into appreciating scotch when it's not a $200 bottle of scotch.
Right.
Because I was of the impression that scotch was either $200 or cheap and bad. Those were the only possibilities.
That's kind of. Right? I mean, you're not wrong, but yeah.
So I asked him, and he told me actually Glenfiddich 12 is Grandpa's favorite.
Yeah.
And Grandpa had passed, so I felt like I never got a chance to have a drink with Grandpa, so this was a chance for me to sort of, post-mortem, I suppose.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, just sort of like enjoy that thing and sort of like learn to appreciate it. But also, I'd at that point when I was buying my first scotch had maybe 15 different whiskeys and was discovering that I had a pretty good palate for distinguishing between them. Was developing my palate. And so I felt that, like, nostalgia aside, I'd be able to evaluate the nostalgic whiskey on its merits. Right. And I felt that Glenfiddich 12 was pretty solid, but not the wow experience I was expecting scotch to be. Right. It wasn't bad, which was a plus, because that was it's cheap and not bad. We have finally won. We found it. Right.
Absolutely.
We have a baseline from which we can start to explore scotch now, because I don't have to worry about hating it or breaking the bank. So from there we went like the Glenlivet 12. I actually liked Glenfiddich better initially. It has more of a texture. It's got a tiny smoky component to it that you mostly don't notice. The Balvenie 12, which was a little bit more bourbony, it's got this kind of leather note to it. That was kind of where I started. I just kind of started exploring stuff. But then I finally said, like, okay, we're messing around with stuff that's not smoky. It's time to go for that Ardbeg 10 that everyone keeps, raving about, right? So I bought Ardbeg 10. I brought it home. I told my wife, this might smell. I have no idea what to. This might smell. You probably want to be in a different room. I have no idea what to expect from this, right? She's like, no, it's okay. Like, it's like food stuff. Like, we experience food stuff together. She doesn't drink. She can't tolerate alcohol at all.
Okay.
Just like as like her stomach can't handle it.
Right.
So like no other reason, she just doesn't drink because of constitution, I guess.
Right.
But she's like, yeah, like open it up. Like we'll like smell it together and see how it is and whatever. So I open it up, I pour it in a glass. And she goes, that smells like my acne medicine. By the way, now might be a good time to get our Laphroaigs in our glass.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to let you know that I am cracking this one. So I was told this is called Cairdeas, right? Not Cairdeas or whatever they call it. Anyway, mine is the White Port and Madeira. I know you don't have this one, but this is the only Laphroaig, not the only Laphroaig I have, but the only one, anyway, the only one like this. Besides
Yeah,
just
I got
the
a Fino
basic
cask finish, so I think we're in the same ballpark.
Same. So let's get into this. And this is actually a 700 ml bottle. I know they started doing that a little while back, but anyway, that's a little different.
And you'll notice a theme here also. When I was getting into whiskey, my parents had also been talking about Laphroaig. So Dad had visited Scotland for work trips at some point in the past, and when I started getting into whiskey, so the first thing he told me was the Glenfiddich 12 was Grandpa's favorite.
Right.
And the next thing he told me is Laphroaig 10 cask strength is my favorite. Dad's favorite. And I think you didn't have Laphroaig 10 cask strength, so we went with the cartridge. It's close enough.
Yeah, close enough. It's 50. Mine's 52.3, so not far off.
51.8. Yeah, so we're still in Laphroaig cask strength. I don't know about age statement. Doesn't really matter. The younger, the better for super peaty whiskeys, right?
Absolutely. I think this. I don't know for a fact. I think this is 3 years in used oak and then two years mixed in port and Madeira. So.
Yeah. Oh man, that's good.
Okay. I don't know how you feel when you drink Laphroaig or even smell Laphroaig. It is unlike any other smoky Scotch that I've ever had. Like I can't pinpoint it because it smells similar to say Bowmore or something like that, but it's not. Or I get it mixed up with Caolila a lot because Caolila has just that smoky note, and you're like, oh yeah, that's Laphroaig for sure. But like it has a softness to it that, and it's
always got citrus.
Yes, absolutely.
It's got, when you dig in there and on the finish, it's got that burning, they call it burning hospital or Band-Aid note, which I think is fairly unique to Laphroaig. Like others have it, but not to the same extent. And it's got this smoke, but it's like an earthy, boggy smoke, as opposed to Caolila, Kilchoman, Lagavulin all kind of have more of a bonfire kind of smoke to me.
Yeah.
And Ardbeg is the other unique one where it smells like burning seaweed and tar.
Yes.
Right. And these things that my wife said, that smells like my acne medicine, right? There's that medicinal note in there. That's not like kids' cough medicine, which you might say about a bourbon.
Right.
It's like serious medicine or like herbal medicine, right? Or benzoyl peroxide, I guess.
So I can totally see, now that I've had a sip of the Laphroaig, I can totally see how getting into gins like you were talking about and getting into smoky whiskey, it's very similar. Obviously, this is smoky. It's malty as well. But like when you have a good gin.
All right. So where were we? Sorry, we were talking about
where I left off.
Gin medicinal. Yeah.
Right. Where gin has this taste to it, to where when you get a good gin, you're just like, yes, there's the juniper, there's all of these cardamom and all these notes in there. And I see how a smoky Scotch can get you there as well, because it's the same effect, but it's in a different way. Like that, it's different flavors, but it's still very much like you can pinpoint certain things in this one. Like this one has a really nice, obviously it's a little different than yours, but it has a really nice like grape skin note on it. And I really enjoy it because obviously I love Madeira finished things to begin with, and port, obviously. But also it's like when you get that medicinal note on top of it, it just kind of makes it all cohesive. And there's a lot of people that can't get into smoky whiskey like that, right? They're like, man, it's just, they can't get over the peat, right? And I always tell them, start with something like Highland Park or something like that, or even like you were saying, Johnny Walker, start with something like that. The Johnny Walker Green Label is a great place to start because it's has smoke to it and it's all malt, but it's also not so smoky to where it's going to blow it's not Octomore, right? But this one for me, it hits all those boxes, and I could see how you would kind of, it's like it's the gin of the whiskey world, it kind of is in that aspect.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of breezed right on by Ardbeg, but I do want to kind of finish that first night story of like, so my touchstone on like the whiskey journey is like, a lot of me getting into whiskey, as you can see, had to do with my dad. It was like it was a bonding thing that, you know, once I
Absolutely.
reached adulthood was a thing that we could finally do together. Um, so the Ardbeg 10, for some reason, even though Laphroaig was like a thing that had been in the back of my head, I kept hearing from, you know, online, Ardbeg 10,
Right.
Ardbeg 10.
Right.
So I got the Ardbeg 10 instead, just to like see what all the hype was about, because I knew I could try Dad's Laphroaig, right? So I opened it up. My wife says smells like my acne medicine. I said, I get like I laughed and I said, I get what you mean, but also like there's still like there's something about it, right? And I tasted it, and I held it in my mouth. I experienced it. I swallowed it, and I said, I think for the first time, I have been able to appreciate the flavor profile of whiskey and simultaneously not like it. Right? It's like it's there. It's not like Johnny Walker Black that I don't
Right.
get, Dewar's White Label that I don't get, 5-10 years ago. It's I understand how to taste this, and I don't know if I like it. It wasn't even like I don't like it. It was like I can appreciate it, and I'm not sure if I like it.
Right.
I went and took a shower, got ready for bed, left the glass there. Didn't finish the glass, didn't pour it out either. I'm like,
Right.
okay, let's just we'll come back to it. And while I'm in the shower, I'm like, okay, that aftertaste it's like it's still there, it's lingering, it's evolving. I'm liking this more and more. And like I came back, I got dressed, and I'm like, okay, I want to have the rest of that glass of whiskey. It's got its hooks in me.
Right.
Right. So I understood that it was like a thing you can bounce off of initially, but it still gets its hooks in you and is like a thing that you want to come back and experience more of. What is it that's going on there?
Right.
And so that between the Yamazaki and the Ardbeg 10 and all those scotches that I tried in between is, the many tries and I would say almost false starts at getting into whiskey. But once I had that Ardbeg 10, I was like, no, we're in it. We have to explore this whole thing now. Right?
Yeah, I totally get it.
I think we kind of went hard from there.
Yeah.
It was the collection at this point was like it was the Macallan and like the Glenfiddich 12, the Glenlivet 12, the Balvenie 12, and the Ardbeg 10. That was what I had. And no, I think that was it, right? And then I started going like, okay, we're gonna like explore all the stuff that's in this kind of $30 to $60 price range, like whatever sounds good. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna try it, share it with friends. Soon had 10 whiskeys, and my wife is going like, I think you have enough whiskey now. And I'm like, I think I do have enough whiskey. But then we would go into Costco and we see this other thing, and I'd be like, but I want to try that. And we kept doing that. And then it was 20 whiskeys, and then it was 40 whiskeys, and then it was like 80 whiskeys, and then we moved, and then it was now at some point in the middle of that, this is a really key point to note. So bourbon, wasn't really in love with it. Scotch single malt, Yamazaki 12, Japanese whiskey. I tried some other things. I really liked Nika. Nika Miyagi-kyo, however it is that you pronounce that. Nika Teketsuru Pure Malt. Really liked that one. And I liked the history behind it.
Right.
Mr. Teketsuru, who studied in Scotland, came back to Japan and decided to create Japanese whiskey from the ground up.
Right.
Making it after the kind of emulating Springbank was his goal.
Yes.
So like you start to see that through line if you try enough of the whiskeys that he had a hand in. I really liked that historical aspect of whiskey too, right? And the fact that like it has a rich history, but it's also I think a lot of people don't realize just how short the history of whiskey is, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whiskey is only approximately as old as the United States, not because the United States invented it, just because the world was, I would say, internationalizing commerce a bit more at that point, where you were traveling barrels of distilled, like people used to distill spirits on their farm. We have a bunch of grain that's going to go bad. We can't sell it. We can't make it. We can't keep it. If we make it into bread, it's like there's nothing we can do with it. All we can do is make beer, and beer only lasts for a while, and then we got to do something else with it. We distill it, get all the spoilable nasties out of it, and then stick it somewhere, stick it in a barrel. But that wasn't even, they put it in jugs, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Putting it in a barrel wasn't even an obvious thing to do until people started like putting it on like carrying it on their backs or something. I don't think people carried barrels on their backs, right? But like somehow trucking oak containers in a carriage on their back, whatever, across the countryside, across the oceans, throughout the frontier, whatever. Stick it in a general store where people go through it slowly. It's picking up character from the wood, which they charred to make it watertight, not because they thought it would have a flavor impact.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And this stuff started only happening, the barrel aging part of it was only like the 16 or 1700s.
Right.
So we're really talking about a product that is 300, 400 years old as we know it today. And there's a lot of history behind all these brands that are half as old as the proper category, so to speak, right? Like Laphroaig being 200 plus years old. There was less time between the beginning of whiskey and the founding of Laphroaig than there was between then and now.
Yeah.
Makes
sense. It makes sense. And, I just, this will be out after this one. So I was talking to a guy Andy over at Glen Scotia, and he was saying that, back in the day in Scotland, Campbelltown was making all of the whiskey for all of Scotland. So there was 16 distilleries there, and then world wars and things like that happened. Now there's only 3. And they were actually going to make it not a category, not a region, because they didn't have enough distilleries. So they made sure and had another distillery. So like Springbank was established in 1828. So, but it's the only distillery that has been under the same name in all of Scotland from the beginning. So which is pretty cool. So but anyway, and
then the boys from Springbank went and opened the Glengyle distillery, and new facility, same people, different distilling season, just so on paper, and it's a different product in terms of it tastes different.
Yeah, it does taste different.
But it's so funny that you have people who were so desperate to still have an identity. Which I don't fault them for this at all.
Absolutely not. No.
That they went out of their way to make a new location, new equipment, slightly different style, so that like in every bona fide way, they created an extra brand, the necessary thing for their main brand to have its identity.
Mm-hmm. So that their region wouldn't die. I mean, that's really cool if you think about it. Like, it's preserving that history that had been there for so long, and they're like, dude, we can't let this go away, And whereas, and not to talk crap about Glen Scotia, they've had 9 different owners, and it's like how do you have?
I love Glen Scotia for being.
I do too. I do too.
The overlooked Campbelltown, right?
Absolutely.
And it has more in common with Spring. Like you would say, oh, it's not as good as Springbank, mate. Like the people get all haughty about that, but like it's got the same hallmarks of character.
It really
does. Closer to Springbank than Kilkerran is.
Kilkerran.
The Glengyle distillery guys.
Yeah.
Kilkerran, right?
Yeah. And what's funny with Glen Scotia, and not to talk about this is a totally different thing, they only distill peated malt 6 weeks out of the year. So, 90% of their whiskey is unpeated, even though it all has a maritime influence. Like it all tastes like it's from Campbelltown. You can definitely tell, which is so cool, it just goes to show, like, and I know people hate it when I say this, there is a terroir thing with whiskey. I'm sorry, there is. If we got a whiskey from where you're at and we got a whiskey from where I'm at, they're going to taste completely different. They could be the same freaking whiskey. They're going to taste completely different just because of climate is just different. Like today, I told you this off air, but like we've had torrential downpours, which it's the middle of July. Why would we have torrential downpours? But whatever. And like it's 74 degrees outside. Like why? It should be over 100 right now, So I mean, it's pretty crazy. But then you also think
we had a cold snap here too. I didn't check the weather. I wore shorts today, and I didn't bring an umbrella. But it was cold and rainy, and I was on foot and had to walk between buildings today, so it was not a fun day.
Okay, so let's get into that if you want to, and this is totally optional, obviously. Yes, let's get into the weather. No, so you're doing all these whiskey things, and obviously, as you and I both well know, whiskey. okay, it starts out cheap, right? It starts out you're buying the 30,
Yeah.
40, $50 bottles. But then you're like, okay, if that's good, this one's probably better, and it's $150. So let's talk
Yeah.
about the day job for a second. What do you do for a day job in order to kind of support this? Obviously, you said you had a little bit of extra income because of COVID, and that's a happy accident, obviously. But
Yeah, that was budget reallocation.
right,
Not that I had extra income.
right, exactly, budget reallocation,
It was I
whatever you want
wasn't
to call
wasting
it.
money on restaurants and bars anymore, and I was
Right.
just saying, well, what if I just buy a bottle of whiskey a week? Not that I intended to drink through a bottle of whiskey a week, because
Yeah.
I need to be clear at this point that I've always valued moderation.
Absolutely.
And actually, I mean, people have varying opinions about the the whiskey tribe, as you think about how that channel has changed over the years.
It has.
But they were a really good source of information initially, and like making me feel like I wasn't about to go waste my hard-earned dollars on something expensive, right? I could get their opinion about, was this worth it, was it not? Really good beginner info, right? It's
Absolutely.
it's a good beginner into, like, not beginner like you've never heard of whiskey, but like you're whiskey curious and you want to become more expert. How do you get started?
Right.
It's a really good channel for that. Definitely 5 years ago, when I discovered it, 2020, 2021. But the thing that made me stick around for the Whiskey Tribe was actually the quarterly dry week.
Okay.
And that came in at a great time for me, because I'd been buying bottles, trying it as a hobby, as a daily practice, not necessarily with the best sense of moderation. But I was pouring more than my now, I would say, my almost signature half ounce, right? Like, where I only ever pour this much in a glass and aim to refill. And then, like, we were sipping on this, and the level in the glass didn't visually change at all. And most likely I'm not going to finish this glass, and I'm going to put a cap on it later and finish it over the next couple of days, because that's what I do.
Right.
But back then it was like, okay, whiskey goes in a glass. I don't know how much. I didn't have Glencairns at the time, so I was using like a tumbler, and it's way harder to measure, right?
Oh,
you
for
put
sure.
more in the glass just so you have enough.
Yeah.
I don't know how much necessarily I was drinking. Not that it was excessive. I wasn't pouring 8 ounces. I was probably 2 ounces, right? But then, because it's in the glass, I was going to finish it, and that was like a daily thing. And in earlier years, I'd had a thing where I had like a liver enzyme problem because of my team at work. We'll come back to the work in a minute. My team at work we go out on Fridays for beer lunch, right? And what I didn't realize about going to a tap house, and like craft beer, is that, like, yeah, they've got high ABV, but they're also pouring a big glass of beer. And we're going and hanging out for 3 hours and talking about the things we wish we could plan, and having insights, and like it was genuine work got done in a very oblique way. There was a lot of value behind getting the whole team away from their computers to talk about problems and come up with creative solutions. Like, what are we really going to go? Jump to the gun a little bit. What I do is software engineering.
Got it.
And I'm out here in Seattle because I worked then, and then I didn't for a while. And now I again work for one of the large software firms out here in Seattle.
Got it.
I'm not going to identify who I work for.
Please
I try to keep this line between my social media.
Yeah. Don't dox yourself, please.
Yeah. I try to keep, and partly it's because I don't want to ever be in a situation where I have to say that, I think I'll try not to over-explain this, but I don't want to be in a situation where I have to say my opinions do not represent my employer. I feel like whiskey is so different from what I do for a day job. There's no concern about that. But I think it's better for me not to cross those streams.
Absolutely.
So yeah, getting the whole team of software engineers away from their computers to just go talk about, like, how are we going to solve the problems? Have a broader view on things. And beer was a good way to do that. We were all into beer. Occasionally, there was a couple people on the team who had wine collections, like size. One had like a whole cellar with like 400 wines.
Oh, wow.
He was like a serious wine collector. But his whole thing, again, this whole, like, you bring people over, you break out the good stuff. When else are you going to drink it, right? He spared no expense. We weren't like his closest friends or his family or anything like that, but we were people who appreciated a good alcoholic beverage. So he felt great about bringing out the expensive wines for us. So that sort of stuff. going out with friends to restaurants where you'd have a cocktail or two, go out to a cocktail bar, have a cocktail or two. And like my daily routine was like 4 or 5 days a week I was having 2 or 3 orders worth of alcohol,
Right.
which when you start to realize how those things are actually made, and like when you're, they talk about 5%, like 12 ounces of 5% beer is a serving. Here's a pro tip to the audience. If you multiply those numbers together, ounces and percent, you get what I call points, right? 12 ounces of beer times 5% alcohol is 60 points. That's a serving of alcohol. So what they're actually serving you is a pint of 8% beer. Go do the math. I think it's like 72 points, or no, it's more than that. It's basically more than a drink and a half, right? So you stack 3 of those, you're into 4 or 5 drinks territory. You do that 5 times a week. You thought you were only drinking, and by you I mean me, right?
Yeah.
You thought you were only drinking, 4 or 5 times a week, 2 drinks. 8, 10 drinks in a heavy week. That's not too crazy. Like you go to the doctor and they talk about like how many drinks do you have a week? Is it 1 to 7, or like is it 0, 1 to 7, 8 to 14? You're in that 8 to 14 category where it's like enough the doctor wants to know about it, but not enough that they're like concerned you've got a problem.
Absolutely.
But then you go and do the math and you realize, no, those 2 drink days are actually 3 drink days. Those 3 drink days were actually 4 or 5 drink days. And then you're like, oh shoot, I'm actually accidentally in that,
the higher
category. The third category, the category where we're concerned now. And I had a liver test result come back where they're like, this is something we should keep an eye on. So I completely abstained from alcohol for 4 months. Fixed that whole thing that was going on. But when I came back, I was really way more intentional about keeping track of how much I was drinking. So I've answered your question about what I do, but I think more importantly, I've answered like how does what I do actually fit into this whole whiskey hobby,
right,
exactly. And the whole moderation thing. And to bring it back to the dry week thing, and this is why I personally still, for my channel, I maintain a dry week. Quarterly dry week, usually the first or second full week of the quarter. So I've actually officially set it to start tomorrow. We're recording on July 16th. So we usually leave it like the week of 4th of July. We're not going to try to tell people to be, alcohol abstinent around 4th of July. Usually we do the next week, but I whiffed the announcement. So we'll just push it back another week. Right. Also, I happen to be going on a trip where it's almost better if I have an excuse not to be drinking. Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Sometimes like going on a trip and meeting family and stuff, you just want to be like, nope, it's dry week, and not performative, but also like if you're around relatives and they just want to like pull out a bottle of Baijiu, and so my wife's family is Chinese, so they want to pull out a bottle of Baijiu and drink half of it. I can't do that. It's not good for my stomach. It's not good for my constitution.
No.
So me being like, yep, this is my quarterly dry week break from podcasts. Like sometimes that's a good excuse to have. But like, not that I'm always using it as an excuse. I also try to put in dry week, like when it's, I would say, inconvenient, right? I think it's important. It's important to like stick to a schedule and not shift too much, because you should let it be inconvenient.
Yep.
You need to test that you don't have coping mechanisms that alcohol is built into. Right.
That's a heavy subject, but yeah, no, that's totally, you're totally right. Because when you do a dry week, when you're like, okay, I'm going to have to do some blood tests or something, so I need to do a dry week anyway because I want my blood test to be good or whatever.
But then you're doing it for a medical reason, and you're essentially like you're hiding something from your doctor. You're hiding something from yourself.
Absolutely. So if you just do it and you're like, okay, we're going to do it now, and then my blood test was last week, like, okay, like we're going to just, the whole point of it is obviously to check in and make sure that you're not having any issues or anything like that. But it's also to see if there's any sort of connection that you have to the whiskey or spirit or whatever you're drinking, beer, whatever it is, that is making you feel like you have to. I need this. Well, no, you don't need it. You want it, but you don't need it. And it's a fine line between the being totally understanding of what you're partaking in and taking it too far, because there's
Yep.
it's not a thing that people see. And I mean, I've done multiple episodes on mental health and stuff like that. There's not a line of alcoholism to where you're like, oh, you're an alcoholic now. Like, it just all of a sudden it creeps up on you, and next thing you know, it's a thing, and it's been happening for the past 15 years, and nobody knew about it because you did it under the table and you were functioning with it and stuff like that. So it's just keeping your mind in check and understanding that whenever you partake, how does that make you feel? And as much as nerdy as this sounds, like, take a journal of maybe what you had. Like I did just now, like, the Yamazaki, the Laphroaig, and then what we're fixing to get into.
I kept an almost obsessive journal for a while. I actually stopped doing it because, but I'll tell you why. It's because I felt like, so first of all, that first dry week, that was tough. That was my wake up call. Right. It was, I'm drinking 2 ounces in a tumbler or whatever for 4 months, and I'm excited. Right. I've got that dopamine addiction to the exploration of the new alcohol thing that I found. Right. The whiskey of the week. Right. Not that I had a drinking problem, that it threatened to become a problem. Right. So the Whiskey Tribe came into my life at the right time, where like they did that dry week, and I'm like, that's a great idea. It was hard for me. Not that I had a physical dependency, but that I had a psychological dependency on that dopamine rush, right? So doing that first dry week was the hardest one by far. And I also want to emphasize, like, community's always been a big part of drinking for me. It was, with my dad, with my family, with my team at work, with my friends. Never drink alone. The pandemic also was testing that, right? Where my rule was never drink alone. My rule had to become don't drink if nobody knows about it. I always kept that rule because it's the closest thing to don't drink alone. But if you're trying to make a tasting hobby, and there's to a certain extent, you have to do some stuff alone. You have to do the research alone. You have to do the sipping, the tasting, at least quietly. You could sit in a room with other people and do that. But if you want to actually start writing reviews, which I did write reviews. I wrote a little over 100 reviews before I mostly kind of gave up on it because it was just another thing. But that's later in the story. But I was writing reviews, and I needed to do that alone. And so my compromise on that was I found an online Discord community called the Whiskey Lodge. And this is significant. I'm not necessarily trying to shill the Whiskey Lodge, but like, this is significant for a later part of the story too. So the Whiskey Lodge Discord community was a little bit more interactive than Reddit. Reddit was a great source of information, but you don't know anybody who's responding to you, right?
Right.
In Discord, you hang out long enough, you meet the 2 dozen regulars. You talk to them about what you're drinking. You always like, I just poured this in the glass. This is what I'm drinking. What's everybody else drinking? And like, have a chat while you're sipping along. You can stop talking for a while, take your notes, come back. It's the asynchronous chat room situation where like you can drop in, drop out, but like somebody who you consider a friend always knows what you're drinking, and that you're drinking, right? And as long as you maintain that, it's never the you're drinking alone thing. My wife also knew, right?
Right. Absolutely.
We were talking about this on 3 Guys 1 Grain when we recorded that the people who are hiding anything from their significant other need to be taking a look at themselves.
Absolutely.
Right. You're potentially hiding a problem, whether it's a financial problem, right? Because look, I mean, it's no secret, a certain amount of money went into this.
Right.
So of course, I do something that pays reasonably well.
Right.
But I also don't want to give you the impression that this was in any way financially easy for me. This was a deliberate budget planning thing.
Right.
And I have at times had to cut back because that budget is taking away from other things, not the essentials, but like, are we going to go on vacation? Okay, we can't buy whiskey this month, right?
Right.
It's
absolutely.
like there's enough for some of these things to entertain. There's not enough money for all the things you want to do, right? And I think that's important for the people who make more money than me and get into this, like the big, like the, I don't know, like the Wall Street finance bros that get $300,000 bonuses every year who don't know how to spend all their money except on a fourth Maserati. Like, you do you, that's great. But I really think there's something to be said for having to choose. What is it that you're gonna, be more invested in your stuff, right?
Absolutely.
If you're going to be an instrument collector, that's great. But like, you can't plan your life around have enough money to do what you want to do, but not too much. Like if you got lucky and you have too much, good on you. But I think this is a good financial class to be in where this is okay, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, separate issues. So I started evangelizing in the Whiskey Lodge. Hey, Dry Week really helped me, right? I found out that I had this going on, you know, sort of, I would say recovered from that. Like not that it was alcoholism, but it was like hey, this was hard. That's concerning. I need to cut back.
Right.
I need to figure out a sustainable way to do this. I was always, even back to when I started drinking, like all the way back when I was like literally 21, from my very first drink, I kept a drinks journal all the way through, I don't know, 2023 or so. And I don't even know why I stopped, other than it was my schedule got more constrained, I feel like. And it was keeping that journal constantly was like its own little obsession that was taking up time. And it was time that I wanted to reallocate to other things. But what I had learned from doing quarterly Dry Week since 2020 was that my consumption, my natural rate of consumption with whiskey was always the same. My blood work was always good. I never had a problem doing Dry Week.
Right.
It didn't seem like I needed it anymore. And now here in 2026, I look back on that gap and say, I actually wish I had still kept that log, but not as tally marks. I wish I had written down what it was.
Right.
I wish I had been writing down what I was having every day, so that in probably like a spreadsheet on my computer that I could search, so that it was easy for me to say, when's the last time I had Yamazaki 12? Because that's fun. That's fun to know. And the only thing I have for that is the pictures I took in my phone of that, but I can't search that easily.
Right.
So I wish that I'd kept that journal. And so like my advice for people would be, keep that journal, but keep more information than you think you need to keep. Because knowing what you drank 6 years ago when you were on that vacation, you might not forget that. But like knowing what you drank when you went out on date night with your wife, that would be cool. And and you could look up in your spreadsheet, I bought this bottle. It tastes familiar. Did I ever have this before? And you might find out that 3 years ago you went to a bar and you had Laphroaig 10 Cairdeas Fino cask and you just forgot. Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So like I wish that I had more data. But there was a time where I was like, I'm keeping all this data and it's not doing anything for me. Right. So I did stop. I think we should get into our third whiskey and talk about.
I think we should.
Where did this go? Because it wasn't just, obviously I'm a podcaster now. Sorry to spoil this. Hi. Since I didn't do my introduction, hi, I'm Doug. I'm the host of Single Malt Frontier. I go by Demi Tastes. On my Demi Taste is my handle on Instagram and Discord. And unfortunately not on Reddit, because I reused my old handle that was like a gaming handle, which is also Demi something. Like you'll know when you see me. I'm Demi reticent on Reddit, but like Reddit doesn't let you change your handle. So I wish that I had had the foresight to know, like when I was first getting into whiskey and it was just one of the hobbies I was engaging with on Reddit, that it would be enough of a hobby. I would have wished I had my own separate identity already set up, but it took me some time to become Demi Tastes. It was maybe a couple years before I made that turn, right? Demi Tastes, by the way, is not just demi with tastes on the end. It's a pun on the espresso cup called a demitas. Demi comes from, I've just always had screen names with Demi in the name. And I was into espresso actually before I was into whiskey. But then it made sense that it was like a little bit of both, because when I made my Instagram, I was thinking this is going to be coffee and whiskey. What I found out was that coffee Instagram is full of people who are way more knowledgeable and way more nerdy than I am about coffee. I have nothing to add to that conversation. And I don't aspire to know enough to have a lot to add to that conversation. So I might put a coffee post out now and then, but I realized that talking about whiskey was really my niche. I did it on Discord. I did it on Instagram. I did it on Twitter before Twitter shat the bed.
Right.
Other microblogs like Blue Sky and Mastodon just don't have the momentum.
No.
Really it's all Instagram and Discord now. I do also maintain the American single malt whiskey subreddit called r/American SMW, which I'm not going to get into why we had to name it that way, but I know it's a bad name, and yet it was the best available. Is the short version.
You get what you get, right?
Yeah, yeah, because ASMW was taken, but inactive, and the mod wasn't around, so I couldn't take that.
Right.
American single malt was taken, same deal. ASM whiskey, same deal, kind of, but there was also the ASM distillery.
Right.
And I was concerned that ASM whiskey would be a community specifically for that distillery, or people would think it was. And so I didn't want to be that. An American single malt whiskey, fully written out, was too long.
Yeah.
But that would have been the best.
Yes, it would have, but
yeah. So American SMW, that's the active subreddit for American single malt whiskey. As much as, I mean, Reddit's kind of dying also.
It really is.
Don't tell that to a Reddit mod, although I'm also a Reddit mod, I guess. But like Reddit went kind of a weird way around 2022 or 2023, which was also, I mentioned I was doing reviews back then. When Reddit took a turn, I teamed up with a bunch of people who were really prominent reviewers on Reddit, and we all kind of knew each other, and we did swaps, and we did advent calendars for each other and stuff. So we had our own little side community going on, and we're like, we all like posting reviews, but Reddit kind of sucks now for posting reviews. Let's make a review website. So we just made a WordPress, nothing crazy. It's called maltrunners.com. It's still active, but I haven't posted on it in a while because, again, I stopped writing reviews at some point. But they're still active. It's a good site. You should check it out. I aspire to return there if I ever get back to writing reviews. But yeah, I suppose my destiny for whiskey media coverage was not ultimately to be a faceless whiskey reviewer. It actually was to become a podcaster, and I'd like to talk about why. And then we'll talk about what we're drinking, which happens to be McCarthy's.
But not any McCarthy's.
Not any McCarthy's. Not just any. This is the Single Malt Frontier single barrel pick rum cask, finished, aged. What was it? 6 years, 8 months, 15 days, or 6.71 years. Really damn close to 7 years old, which would have made it the oldest McCarthy's at the time that had been released that we know about when it actually hit the market. Now, of course, there's 10-year McCarthy's and everything, but that's history, right?
Right.
How we got to doing this barrel pick is essentially the rest of my story. Right. We're on Reddit, we're on Discord, we're hanging out, we're drinking whiskey all the time. Discord's a public community. And it wasn't just whiskey enthusiasts and weirdos from the internet, because let's face it, definitely some of the people in there are just weirdos from the internet. Frankly,
absolutely.
As far as they were concerned, so was I, until I put my face out there on a podcast and behaved like, let's not call ourselves normal. Nothing about being a whiskey podcaster is normal. But like, let's say we can at least hold a conversation, right? Verbally in front of people. But other people who show up in these communities are distillers. And one of the distillers that showed up in the Whiskey Lodge was Joseph O'Sullivan, the then head distiller, not even master distiller yet. He hadn't gotten that title promotion, of Clear Creek and McCarthy's, right? So Joseph O'Sullivan, head distiller of McCarthy's, shows up in the Whiskey Lodge, hangs out for a while. He's just one of the guys. I think he had like a broken arm or something. And he was like on couch rest. So he was just like hanging out on the internet. And he discovered our community.
It's like, here I am.
And he was just hanging out, one of the guys drinking whatever, like everybody else, posting, being a member of the community, not trying to sell anything. And then and it became known at some point that he was a distiller, but he was still not trying to like sell his products. He was just trying to be a member of the community. And at some point somebody asked him like, hey, like, what do you distill? Or like what do you like drinking and that sort of thing? And it came up, he's like, well, actually, a lot of the time I like drinking McCarthy's, which is actually a product I make. Is it okay for me to talk about it? And like, he was just so humble in the approach that like, I honestly don't think I would have tried McCarthy's except for that.
Wow.
Because I would never have seen it. Right. I'm up here in Washington. McCarthy's is down in Oregon. It's technically in the stores, but like, why would I have looked twice at, this random smoky glass scotch like bottle that costs what, $70 for the 3-year,
right?
$100 for the older single barrel stuff. Like, what about this brand, which didn't say the first American single malt at the time, by the way, right? It just said something along the lines of distilled from a mash of 100% uh, Scottish peat smoked barley or some other thing like that, right? And it was just, Oregon single malt whiskey in the big text. But single malt didn't mean anything at the time, right? So they were really emphasizing whiskey and what it actually was, and there was lots of words in the label. It was a very, if you're into whiskey but you don't know all the details yet, it's an awkward label to look at, right? It's the sort of thing where if you're not careful, you'd either look past it or look down your nose at it, I think. Right? Which is a shame, like really a shame. And I'll admit that there was a time in this whole thing where I was a whiskey snob. And I always tried to fight that off. And that was another thing that I think the whiskey tribe brought to the equation was basically telling you, don't be a snob. Like, don't be a snob about whiskey. But the thing is that, and just quick sidebar, there is a lot of snobbery in that community.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's actually a lot of snobbery among the people who appear on that channel. Right?
Absolutely.
There's the anti-snobbery. And I say this with all the love for Daniel. I've met Daniel. Daniel's a lovely person. I know that people have opinions about certain things that have gone on in his life. And the whiskey marketing school, which I know yourself are a graduate of.
I am.
The people have opinions, and I've always been of the opinion that like this channel is a great whiskey education channel. Daniel is a great whiskey educator.
He is. Certain
other people on the channel are less with the whiskey education and more about the shenanigans.
They are.
I always appreciated the education side of the channel, but the purported "don't be a snob" part was always a snobbish statement, and it has bred a certain type of person on the internet who's into whiskey and thinks they're not being snobby by exuding a snobbery about not being a snob in such and such way. And this includes such things. I want to come back to this thing that you brought up earlier, of shitting on the idea of terroir because it's too fancy. Or
thank you.
Or saying that the word smooth is a completely useless descriptor because we're better than that. But like that is the definition of being a snob. You're introducing somebody to whiskey and you ask them, "Hey, what do you think?" And they say, "That's really smooth. I like that." And you say, grumble, grumble, smooth doesn't mean anything. What do you really mean by that? You're turning that person off of whiskey potentially forever, right? You have done the wrong first impression. This was not a good elevator pitch. Let them have smooth.
Yeah.
Smooth is fine. Normalize being okay with the word smooth. Normalize being okay with the concept of terroir. Like, I don't think anybody who says whiskey has terroir is saying it's the same thing as terroir in wine, right? Correct. Wine grows on a vine, grew out of the soil, and there's not that many steps between the fruit and the end product in the bottle. So, of course, the taste of the soil, the minerals, the vegetation that was there is in your bottle of wine. And the region has a strong attraction in flavor profile to what's actually in that bottle of wine. By the way, I have no palate for wine. Even all these years of drinking whiskey, really? I've always bounced off of wine, and my only ability to taste wine has been by forcing my brain to analyze it like a whiskey. But I could not do tasting notes on wine before I could do tasting notes on whiskey.
I don't think I could either.
It's always been really surface level. So I don't think tasting whiskey and tasting wine are the same thing. I think there's different palates. I think I have a good palate for whiskey and spirits and somehow not for wine. I don't know why that is. I'm not going to try to analyze that. But back on the terroir thing, yeah, sure. Terroir and wine, like when you're actually, people here, I think, the Master Court of Sommeliers have their test. And on this test, you have to be able to taste a glass of wine and from characteristics of its flavor profile, identify which bank of Bordeaux it came from, right? Or what other region of France or Italy or wherever it came from. And that you can tell this by terroir. There's a lot of people who don't believe that. I 100% believe that. But I was definitely skeptical before I got into whiskey. And like at this point, blind sample showdown proves that we all think we're better than we are.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely,
I've had a pretty good track record of blind identifying distilleries, especially ones I've got on my shelf.
Right.
I can't do bourbon. I don't really have a palate for bourbon. Bourbon, I fully believe in the same way that there are people for whom wine tastes very unique and distinct and has lots of different, variations in flavor. Same for bourbon. But to me, one bourbon tastes a little bit different from another, but like with no context, all bourbon tastes the same to me. If I
Right.
put two glasses of bourbon next to each other, I can find the differences. It's like one of those puzzles. What are the differences between these two pictures? I can do that. But for the most part, a glass of bourbon with no context is the same as any other glass of bourbon with no context, within reason. There are bad bourbons that are obviously bad. There are flavorless bourbons that are obviously flavorless. There are extremely oaky bourbons. But if we're talking about just flavor notes, I don't know. I'm not a bourbon fluent taster, right? Just like I'm not a wine fluent taster. But single malt, for whatever reason, has always been really easy for me to pull apart.
I agree.
So that's one reason I was really into single malt. And when Joseph showed up and showed off his McCarthys, and he was so humble about the fact that he made this thing, and he thought it was good, but he wasn't about to try to tell you this is the best thing ever, that like you should all go out and buy this, I'll give you a coupon, right? Nothing like that.
Right.
It's just like, I'm drinking my whiskey, right? Didn't even try to upsell anybody, but I said, that guy's cool and I want to try his whiskey. So I went out to Total Wine and I found a bottle and I bought it. It was still to this day one of my favorite single barrel 70, which years later I found another bottle of and bought it, even though it cost $30 more than the last time, but it was worth it. Great. You rebuy your single barrels. Now, obviously my own, and I have 18 bottles of this, right? My own single barrel is my favorite now. And I think will be probably, I have enough for the rest of my life. But yeah, that was how I met Joe, right? I tried his whiskey. I became a moderator and then an admin of the Whiskey Lodge because I was around so much, essentially, right? Becoming a mod of a community is don't be a jerk, set the culture, be the culture. Everybody knows you, enforce the culture, right?
Yeah.
Enforce the rules, right?
And that's how it should be.
So it was a very natural progression. And because I was a moderator of the Whiskey Lodge, and there's some like yada yada yada, I don't quite know how it happened, but I ended up going to visit the distillery, the Clear Creek distillery, and I met Joe there, and we talked, and he gave me some samples, and he tried he gave me a taste of the PX, the McCarthy's 6-year finished in PX before it was done.
Yeah.
So I got an early preview of that, gave him some, I guess I could say I gave him some product feedback. I don't think he actually made any changes on that basis, but like, I think it made him happy that like he and I drank a bunch of whiskeys together, and he like knew, online or otherwise, he knew that our palates agreed to a certain extent, but not entirely. And that if he asked me for my opinion about his product, he could trust it.
Right.
Right. And the fact that a distiller trusted my palate put me in a certain headspace. I said, like, okay, I'm more, this is more than just I think I'm good at this. This is professionals think I'm good at this. What am I going to do with that now? Keep writing reviews. Okay, sure. But American Single Malt became a thing that kept on coming up. I went to a virtual tasting of Westland where they introduced the Calere First Edition, which was all grilled pineapple, the new Westland flagship. And then I went to a tasting at Copperworks, and I joined this Scotch meetup group, but people kept on bringing whiskey to that. So McCarthy's was there. Lost Lantern Vatted Malt No. 1 was there. Balcones, Texas 1 single barrel was there. McCarthy's, came up, and like, I just thought, and every time I encountered one of these things, it's like, okay, that's not Scotch, but there's something special about this. And I've had enough examples now that I can see that there's a category,
right?
Not necessarily the same flavor profile, not the same as Scotch, not the same as bourbon, not the same as each other, but a category nonetheless. There's something here. There's a movement, This was before the ratification of American Single Malt. So I subscribed to Single Cask Nation, not the their podcast, One Nation Under Whiskey.
Right.
There was another podcast called Single Malt Matters.
Yes.
Which was great. And if that podcast had never stopped running, I would never have made mine, because I really think that's true. And I've told him that. I've met the host. He's actually a friend of Reed Huddleston, who I think you've met. You've had him on your show. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Matt Drew, I believe is his name, the host of Single
Okay.
Malt Matters, is a friend of Reed Huddleston's, and he got us on a Discord call together, and we like chatted it out. He was telling me I was thinking about bringing the podcast back, and then for personal reasons he decided not to. But like I had already started my podcast at that point, so um, at that point it was like, okay, we could collaborate. I've skipped some steps here. I'm gonna go
That's
back.
fine.
That's what I do. I jump around.
It's okay.
So like I met more people in the industry. I kept trying American single malts. I was listening to all these podcasts where they were interviewing single malt producers and becoming one of the foremost experts in the community, experts, let's say. Among expert consumers, I knew more about American single malt than anybody else. Then it became a point where among some of the producers of American single malt, I knew more than them. In some ways, not the production side,
Right,
but about the
right.
category, about what was happening, right? I had a broader view of the industry and knew more trivia, if that's valuable.
Right.
And like I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And I was chatting with Joe online, and somehow I don't know if he put the idea in my head or I came up with it and he enabled me, but I said I should write a book. And people have always told me, because I clearly like talking, I should make a podcast. And I always said, but I have nothing to talk about. What am I going to talk about? Like, I am not the foremost expert on anything in the software space. Like I'm good at my job in the sense that like I show up to work and do a good job and deliver results, but I'm not an expert on anything. I'm not a thought leader of any kind. On any topic, there are hundreds of people in my industry who know more than me.
Right.
Maybe for a few small corners of the world of software, I know I would be in like the top 10 experts, but like not enough to make a podcast, right? Why would I make a software podcast? Also, who would listen to a software podcast? Like I've tried subscribing to some software podcasts. Like there's a C++ podcast. That's how nerdy I am.
Oh, wow.
I'm into that in a way, but like you're really talking about the dry corporate seminar style of podcast, not the kind of exciting content that people want to listen to. I don't want to be the one making that, but I'm always into the people. I've always been into people. So I was thinking about starting a podcast at work for my team. My team had like 600 people.
Oh, wow.
And what I wanted to do was like give away for the cool people that I had met who haven't gotten exposure in the whole organization to be seen a little bit. Is it, some manager who mostly keeps to themselves but has some cool stories? Is it an intern? Is it somebody who's been here for 3 years and has a unique perspective about something that they think people should pay more attention to, but like focused around the people? That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a podcast focused around people. But I also didn't really want to get like, if I were to make a successful corporate podcast in a corporate environment, they would own that thing and I would be stuck doing it. And I didn't want that to become a work responsibility either. Right. So I was like, oh, we're not going to do that. But I had this whiskey thing going on. I knew American single malt whiskey producers. I knew a lot of things about American single malt. And I had this idea that I wanted to write a book, which may or may not ever actually happen. I keep thinking that it really will, but
I mean, it should.
I have a kid now. Time is short. Who knows? But when I was thinking about making a book, I thought, I like these podcasts that do producer interviews. I'm going to have to do producer interviews of my own if I want to write a book with primary sources. Otherwise, I'm borrowing other people's podcasts, and I'm going to have to go ask for permission for every one of those things, and it's not my voice being entered into the equation. And I'm still going to cross-reference those sources, but I wanted to have most of my sources to be interviews I personally conducted from a I don't know, call it investigative journalism perspective.
Right, absolutely.
Was the idea. And then and I was just doing the interviews. When the TTB, my first ever interview was actually Jared Himstead at Balcones. I happened to be in Texas at the time when TTB published their proposal in late July. Give me a year, 2022, I think, 2023, I forget. 2022, because it was a year and a half and they ratified in 2024, right? So August, it was late July 2022 that news came out. I sent an email to Jared. 2 days later, I was in the Balcones tasting room sitting down and interviewing him around a relatively crappy music recorder, just whatever I had, my phone. And I went on a tour with him. I sat down and asked him a bunch of questions. He took me up to the whiskey library and we tasted through some cool things. It was a great Joseph O'Sullivan sort of put me in contact with him, but it was more like Joseph's like, feel free to name drop me when you ask Jared for an interview, but he's cool.
Right.
He's gonna take your interview. So Jared was the second industry person I actually met, but I was like, I'm gonna write a book. I have no other intentions behind this interview, right? I wish that I had decided ahead of time I was gonna have a podcast, because then I would have been like, hey, I'm gonna publish this, and like, how do we want to go about doing that? I don't know if that audio is. I've listened back to it. I don't think it's a bad interview, but especially with Diageo in the equation now, I'm not sure I want to poke that bear by publicly releasing an old interview. Technically,
Yeah.
I own it. That's between me and Jared only,
Right.
because it was a
You
long
would
time
need-
ago.
You would only need his permission to do it, but
Right.
at the same time, do you want to poke that bear that is way bigger than
think-
you are?
I think what's going to happen with that interview is it's going to be a Patreon exclusive. That's one of the reasons I made the
that'd be
Patreon.
good. Yeah, that would be.
Because I've got probably like 6 interviews like that where it was something I recorded, but it was bad equipment. It wasn't clearly destined for a podcast, or something else happened with it where like I don't think there's some reason it shouldn't go on the feed maybe. So yeah, so I started doing these interviews. I said, okay, I know things, I know people. There's a book maybe eventually, but that's going to take a while. I'm doing these interviews. What am I going to do? Okay, we're going to make a podcast. So my first step to that was I got together with some people from the Whiskey Lodge and I made a YouTube channel. And step 1 was show up regularly and do a whiskey talk show and see if we can do it. See if there's people in this group who feel like being a podcast host, who can show up weekly or twice a month or whatever it's going to be. I didn't even intend for me to permanently be one of them.
Oh, wow.
I was thinking, I originally called it the Whiskey Lodge Cast. It was the podcast of the Whiskey Lodge. It wasn't going to be about single malt. It was me and Phil, Duck Phil Platypus, the Ranger's Respite, and a guy called Spooky Chicken, whose real name is Ian, who now works at Del Bach as a tour guide. But he in a previous life was a wine sommelier. So other people we invited on, the original founder of the Whiskey Lodge we wanted to bring on. We had him on for one thing, which was, I believe, an unlisted video, which was the celebration of the American single malt ratification or something along those lines. Yeah. None of that really, like, the only people who were interested in doing it, Phil already had a YouTube channel, and I wanted this thing to work. And as long as it was me and Phil already had his YouTube channel, I said, okay, I'm doing this American single malt whiskey book thing. I'm doing the interviews for this book. I'm going to make a podcast. I'm going to make the Single Malt Frontier. I didn't know it was going to be called Single Malt Frontier. We went through another name. It was called the Demi-Taste podcast for a while, because like when you don't have a name, what do? You name it after yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're like, but that wasn't going to work for very long. I think we did about 10 episodes under that branding. And then at some point there, people started asking me for interviews. Not me to give interviews like this, but people started asking me if they could come on my show, because Single Malt Matters had been basically discontinued 1.5 years before I started my channel. I started doing the podcast, and then Murphy Quint and Ryan Nagley reached out to me and like offered me samples and invited me to come to ACSA as like attend the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission meeting, right? Where like, by essentially inserting myself into the room, people then knew who I was. And I have, I guess, done a good enough job about communicating about American single malt whiskey that what I do is valuable to the industry in a certain way. Not enough to get sponsored, but apparently. But I guess I'm working on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's baby steps. Baby steps.
Yeah. So after some time, let's bring it back to this bottle of McCarthy's. After some time of being in the industry, basically, Joe was like, okay, like, you got a podcast, you got a platform. I've got some cool barrels of whiskey I want you to try. And if there's a match in there and you want one of those to be a barrel pick, we'll set that aside for you and we'll talk about it, right? So one of the samples he sent me, there was a couple of cool samples, and some of them were Trail's End preview samples and stuff. But one of the samples he sent me was this rum cask McCarthy's, because he knew from my palate what I wanted to do was a heavily peated, something in a finished cask, and I wanted it to be cool. I wanted it to be something that wasn't everywhere, right? I don't need another sherry finished whiskey. I want something that's got a story that is unique that we can tell, and ideally, it's also delicious and priced well. If we could hit that trifecta of interesting, delicious, and priced well, we'll be in a good spot. And even at $120 a bottle, I think this is priced really well.
Absolutely.
It's a little too high to sell quickly, but
okay, getting into that, getting into the actual whiskey itself, right? I will tell you that, I purchased this bottle when it might have been, I don't know, 4 months after you guys released it. So it's been a minute. I purchased the bottle just to support you, Doug, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
But then after I opened it, because it was going to be a shelf bottle, I was just going to, it's a single barrel of a buddy of mine, whatever, it's fine. But then I opened it and actually sipped it and realized that, holy crap, this is a fantastic bottle. And then I heard Blind Sample Showdown or something that there was like 12 bottles left, and everybody's like ghosting these numbers of how many are left. I went ahead and I'll be transparent about this and bought 2 more bottles because I was like, bro, this is a one-of-a-kind whiskey, and I will sample this out to anybody who wants a sample of it for sure. But this is okay. It's fully McCarthy's. It's McCarthy's, and it's peaty and briny and it's smoky, but not so smoky to where it's like campfire. It's not Andalusia Striker smoky. It's just a little bit of smoke in there. But then there's such a sweetness and a balance to everything that it just, to me, it is the best McCarthy's I've ever had. And I say that getting samples from Caitlin, which I'm sure she'll come up here in a second. Getting samples from Caitlin, like the best.
Is she waiting in the back?
She is.
She's waiting in the green room.
She's coming on loud. No. No.
That would be really funny.
That would be funny. Coming soon, guys. Anyway, but like the fact that all of that came together.
We should clarify for anybody who's not been paying attention. I met Joe when he was the head distiller of McCarthy's.
Absolutely.
He became the master distiller, and then he matriculated and went to a different distillery. And Caitlin Bartlemay, who was, I guess, the second in command in McCarthy's, moved into the head distiller and then master distiller positions after Joe. So Caitlin Bartlemay is now the head honcho of McCarthy's. Yep. And when we talk about McCarthy's, and especially modern McCarthy's, and by modern McCarthy's, I mean things released in the last 3-4 years, it's right. Caitlin Bartlemay.
Absolutely. And so, okay, when you were this might be way too much, and I know you had a hard stop, but what made you?
Oh yeah, that's right. Thank you for reminding.
Yeah, you did. It's like 8 minutes. Anyway, what made you pick this barrel?
Hold up, your audio just cut out.
Oh God, what made you pick this barrel?
Wait, did it do it again? Hold on. I wonder if that's my. Hold a sec. Okay, go.
What made you pick this barrel?
So it was one of the first ones offered to me, but it was at 3.5 years old or something like that.
Oh my God.
So I said, that's cool. It's got some promise. It doesn't quite have enough of that rum flavor yet. It doesn't have enough barrel influence. I'm not ready to do a barrel pick of this one yet, but it's really cool. I want to keep an eye on it. And in the 2 or 3 years after that, I kept on visiting the distillery, going into the barrel house, trying different stuff, see if we could find an interesting barrel. Like, what's it? Is there something cool this year that could be the one? Let's keep trying that rum cask. When is that going to be ready? So we tried a bunch of stuff, and it's like, okay, there's lots of single casks of McCarthy's out there, and they're great. And I could have had another single cask of McCarthy's, but what I really wanted was something unique that had a story to tell, that was its own thing. And so it was like, yeah, this is good. I'm glad we're drinking this. This is fun. But I know that doing a barrel pick is going to be a lot of work. It's going to be some paperwork. It's going to be a lot of legwork. I've got to have an audience I can sell it to. Partly I have to make sure that audience is interested in the thing that I'm offering. Right, is going to buy enough bottles of it. And we did okay. I think we sold 70 bottles in like the first 2 weeks, and then we sold another 30 bottles over the course of the next 3 months or something like that. And then there was another year of, I think there was 160-ish bottles.
Okay.
There was another year it took to sell through the rest of them, so that's not great. So like, was this a successful barrel pick in the sense that this is one of the best whiskeys I've ever tasted, and I mean that for real. Yes, I'm beyond thrilled this has my name on it, or my podcast name on it. So it's, whatever. I was able to say, I picked this thing. This is mine. This speaks to my palate and my sensibilities. It was a thing I was never willing to compromise on. Like, it wasn't that I wanted the only McCarthy's ever to be exclusively aged in not Garyana, right? Every other McCarthy's has been in Garyana oak, new refill, whatever, for some part of its aging. Right. This was the only, there was a pair of barrels like this. One was sold to a different club. I think mine's better, just to say. It's also older. We waited longer before we bottled it, therefore it came out at a higher age statement.
Right.
And I think it was the better of the two ultimately. That's my personal opinion, but I also think other people have reinforced that opinion. So okay, because it's A-Fish. I'll just this is not my podcast. I'll say right. A-Fish, the aficionados group, also known as Our Bourbon, or there's some overlap between those groups. They did a pick of the other barrel 702. This is barrel 701. Barrel 702 went to that club, and it was the flavor profile of it. It had aged a little bit more oaky. It was a little bit hotter, and it had a little bit less of those like mid-bass notes to it in the profile. And I think that barrel was the right pick for them in the sense that they lean towards a bourbon palate.
Right.
And this was the right barrel for me. So I think two things can be true, right? That was the right pick for them. This was the right pick for me. And for me personally, this is the best whiskey I've ever tasted. It's certainly as of 2024 when this came out, or right. I think it was, as of late 2024 when this came out, it was the best whiskey I'd ever tasted. I think I would stand by that now. Although you acclimate to things, right? Like the more of this that I taste, the more it becomes familiar, and the more the new, becomes the most interesting thing in the room. But given enough time away from this, I come back and go, damn, that was good. Like that wasn't my imagination. This is still one of the best whiskeys I've ever tasted.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't even that. It wasn't even this is going to be the best whiskey I've ever tasted. I wanted, if I was going to do a barrel pick, it might be my only one ever, because if it doesn't go well, I might not be able to do it again.
Right.
I wanted it to be something with a cool story. And ideally it tastes good. But tasting good is a requirement. But the best thing in the world was like you can't plan on that. No. Right? So, and also there was some time between when we said this is ready and when it actually went into bottles. So there was a chance it would have gone the wrong way in that time, but it was, it ended up being that extra year was good for it. It was ready a year before, but it was more ready when it actually went into bottles. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So like sometimes it's like you haven't quite hit peak on a whiskey, but you can't tell that. You're like, this is still one of the best things I've ever tasted. Why don't we release it?
Right.
So it was lucky that it worked out that way. It was about the story. It was about being able to say McCarthy's is always aged in Garyana oak, Oregon oak. This one wasn't, right? And it's a fairly neutral rum cask. Like there's some rum notes in there, but it's a fairly neutral rum cask that was ex-bourbon, ex-Jack Daniels, we think. Brown-Forman for sure.
Right.
So a fairly neutral bourbon that then held a fairly neutral rum that then acted as a fairly neutral tertiary aging cask for an entire 6.5 years of McCarthy's. That's a cool story to tell. Every bit of that is cool.
Absolutely.
And it also is freaking amazing, right? So like we really just checked all the boxes, and then I had to fight for the price point. It was going to be higher. So I had to fight to bring the price point down just so that my people would sell it, right? Would be able to buy it. Because I know the appetite of the Whiskey Lodge and my audience is not necessarily paying $140 for a single barrel of McCarthy's.
No.
So 120, we were hoping it would be under 100, but like that was wild talk. Nobody, I don't think.
Right.
When whoever it was that told me, I don't remember if it was Joseph or Caitlin, that we were going to try to hit a price point of between $80 and $90. I said, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Okay,
When
okay.
when the ink is dry, ain't no way.
Yeah, that's not happening. Sorry.
And based on that anchor point of 80 to 90, I told people it would probably be 100 plus.
Right.
I was thinking 100 to 120. And at some point when they said, the people in HRD, because of what it costs to make this barrel, for this barrel of whiskey, because of the yield and everything, what they want to get out of it, what the margins want to be and everything, they wanted to price it at, I think it was 140. And I said, geez, I understand why. Like, I really do understand why, with all the sensitivity in the world, and it's worth it. But, my audience is not going to sell out of 160 bottles at $140. So if we want to sell this out, we got to meet in the middle between the 100 I said, maybe it'll be 100, maybe it'll be a little more than that. We got to meet in the middle between that 100 and the 140 that you want. Split it down the middle and call it 120. So that's how we came to that price point. But really, I did fight for it, and it was a marketing story. It was what's the best balance between, you need to make your margins, like what's the minimum you can sell it for.
Amen.
And then you need to have your margins. So like, what's the meet in the middle point on that?
Well, and that just goes to show, working with the people that you're dealing with, right? And saying, hey, I can't make that work. Like, we were super lucky in our three guys pick that the freaking bottles were $65. Like, come on, like that's stupid. Like, I don't care. It could be the crappiest whiskey in the world for $65. Somebody's going to buy it, right?
Yeah.
But the fact
and for those of you who are listening who for some reason don't know, Randall and I are together on another podcast called Three Guys One Grain, and we did a barrel pick there. Just in case you're new.
2 barrel picks. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're new, because obviously if you don't know me or Doug, you're stupid at this point.
Yeah, why are you listening to this episode?
Why are you here? But anyway, at the same time, like just seeing that, and then like, I personally, and I didn't, know going into this, like, thought it would probably be an $75, $80 bottle or something like that. So meeting the person where they are and saying, hey, I know you wanted at this, but we need to drop it down to this to meet that quota, and they were able to do that. That just says something for not only Clear Creek, Hood River, not just for them, but like your ability to do that with, I'm not going to say the pull you have, but
it wasn't pull. It was definitely a personal favor, right? Because I know the folks at Clear Creek, and it was a mutual arrangement, right? Like, if we can't come to an agreement on this, it's bad for everybody if the bottle's priced so high it doesn't sell.
Absolutely.
So if what ends up happening there is, we say, if the price point is the reason, that can't be my barrel pick, that would break my heart. But that could be, a failed barrel pick, and we could debate whether being on sale for a year and a quarter is a failure. Because
I don't think it is, but I mean,
there's an argument to be made, right? It's not ideal.
There's an argument, right?
But like, if we could just say, like, yeah, we put this barrel out and I was incapable of selling it to even a plausible degree. Yeah. That would be bad for my podcast, my brand, my everything. It would be a shame that this barrel didn't get to go out into the world in the form I wanted it to be. Like, what would happen to it? Somebody else would come pick it and sell it for more. I don't know. It's good that we came to that conclusion. But there was definitely like, I didn't have to work nearly as hard sitting in the room and doing those negotiations, because Joe initially offered me this barrel by sending me a sample and saying, I think this is something you're going to like. You might want to do a barrel pick of this. And I said, we talked about it. I gave him sensory feedback on it, and we agreed it needed more time. And then Caitlin took it over, and I had to work with Caitlin on it. And there was a little bit of missing context there, but Caitlin and I have become really good friends. And when it came time to, start doing the final paperwork on this barrel, I had a friend inside the distillery who was also happened to be the master distiller, sticking her neck out for me to make this thing happen the way that we wanted it to happen, even very possibly to her own detriment.
Absolutely.
in terms of she called in a favor with the brand, and that means that there's that much slack in the leash that they're not going to offer next time, especially if it didn't go well. So like, we we could have a debate about how well it went or not. And maybe we'll only know for sure if they offer me another single barrel at some point. But like me personally, I don't feel like I love McCarthy's and I'm going to buy everything that they put out.
Amen.
I don't personally feel like I need to put my name, like my next barrel pick or a very soon one needs to be another McCarthy's, right? There's a whole field of excellent American single malts out there, and like leaving aside the fact that that everybody at the distillery is a friend of mine. I don't think there's any hard feelings when I say, but in the interest of the category of American single malt and the brand single malt frontier, I need to look elsewhere.
I have to move on.
I think everyone feels good about that.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where we're going to stop it at this point. We look, because it's one of those things where you have to look to the future, right? You have to look at what tomorrow brings you. And although you did a fantastic barrel pick, and I feel like our 3 Guys 1 Grain barrel pick was absolutely fantastic for our palate and for, I mean, the way that it came for the price point and the way that it came together was almost serendipitous. Anyway, but like also like that leaves so much out there. Like there are, as we've talked about till we're blue in the teeth, like there are so many new distilleries coming up and people coming up with age-stated American single malts and things. It really opens the doors not only for you, but for a lot of other people to be like, hey, maybe I want my next barrel pick to be Warfield, or maybe I want it to be a 888, or you know, like there's so many other distilleries, not to take away from the ones that we've already talked about. Like, you know, obviously we all love our specific brands that are around our area and stuff like that, and the ones that we support over and over again, and you can't get enough of their bottles and stuff like that. But there's something to be said about the one that's like, this is a little obscure, this is a little different. And I feel like that's what American Single Malt, and I know you can attest to this, American Single Malt kind of brings to the table. It's like, it's not your average whiskey. Like some of these whiskeys are weird. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a very good way. Like, this is just a weird whiskey. So it's like, you know, like I had, what was it? Oh, it was a Copperworks the other day, and it was called something Tropical Breeze or something like that, and it literally tasted like a pina colada, right?
Nice.
And I'm like, yes, please. Like, that is great. Like, is it everybody's...
And those tasting notes, like coconut and pineapple, exist in whiskey, but are both kind of rare.
They are.
So it's really cool to get a whiskey that exhibits both.
Absolutely. And the cool thing about all of it, putting it together, is like, they're like, okay, this is a single barrel. We're going to release it, and then that's it. And so you can find these things out there, and just going to different distilleries and doing the thing. And that's why I try to tell everybody, just like, shop local as you can. Obviously, there's not distillery in everybody's backyard, but like, shop local, find something really cool, and just kind of go with it and see what happens, because you might find a barrel 701 out of that batch, and who's to know, you know? So
yeah.
Oh, Lord.
And that you know, that brings it, you know, all this gets us to here. How did this happen? Like, obviously, one step at a time, right? How do you eat an elephant?
One bite.
One bite at a time.
One bite.
So all of these things, some of these, I mean, Lost Lantern up here, that's entirely because I'm a fan of what they do, and there's a lot of different brands in there.
We could have had a whole episode just on them. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but we've done that a couple times already.
We really have. We really have.
Yeah. McCarthy's is one where this is a single brand, and you can see I've got a collection of all the stuff they've ever released, because that is my favorite brand of whiskey the world over, and I mean that. All scotches included.
Wow.
I stand by it. I mean, I did the barrel pick. I've put all my eggs in that particular basket, and I don't feel the least bit of shame or fear about that.
You shouldn't.
It's a great brand. But most of what I've got on my shelf is I got a couple bottles at a time, either out of my own pocket or because I was generously offered samples for the podcast. Right. And they all reflect a different kind of flavor profile, a different story, a different cask, a different whatever it is. There's something unique and interesting about pretty much everything on the shelf. Like, if I grabbed one and just started telling you about it, That's the fun thing about leading whiskey tastings, which is the thing that you do, and is a thing that I
Yep.
do, probably
Yep.
less often than you. But
Yep.
I love just like putting together a tasting panel,
Mm.
just being like, really start with the vibes. What am I feeling?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to start? We want to start with something like this 43%,
Right.
gentle, get
Light
people's palates
smoke.
primed. You
Right.
got some stuff to talk about,
Right.
but you're really setting people up for whatever the next thing is. And you move into a slightly higher proof, maybe something with a finishing cask, whatever. Talk, maybe the third whiskey, the second or third whiskey is talking about what does bottled and bond mean. And you can talk about that with American single malt. You've got bottled and bond and you've got single malt in the same conversation. That's cool.
Absolutely.
You can't do that without American single malt in the equation.
Right.
And just building a tasting like that, like, you could essentially, like, it looks random. Like, I go down my shelf and I go like, there's a thought process behind, but when the tasting shows up, people go like, what do these things have in common? And it's actually more what they don't have in common. It's the fact that every one of these bottles, I can tell you something new about whiskey. And there's a palate through line where you're not going to be super fatigued. That's what I'm going for. It doesn't have to be similar. It doesn't have to be like categorical, but here are the differences, like minor differences. Those are ways to do tastings. I could do that too.
Yep.
But if you say like, show me whiskey or introduce me to American single malt or introduce me to single malt, world single malts, right? What I'm going to show up with is going to look random to you until I talk you through it.
Right.
And you're going to walk away from that going like, wow, that was the most educational whiskey tasting I've ever had in my life.
Were you taking notes? Because you need to take notes.
Yeah. There will be an exam later after you've had 3-4 drinks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like, oh, let's scribble it a little bit. But I think that's part of the way that we both do whiskey. Is we do it to where we want to inform people, but we also we don't take it so serious to where we're like regimented in it has to be XYZ. Like, no, it's like, what am I feeling today? Like, I'm feeling a little more first fill bourbon cask. Okay, let's go down that route. Or I'm feeling this, right? It's not so much, it's letting the whiskey talk to you, not you talking to the whiskey. And I feel like a lot of people just kind of regiment their tastings upon, we're going to do a Weller lineup and everybody's going to drink this and we're going to have the rainbow and all the things. Like, it doesn't have to be that. And I'm not poo-pooing bourbon or anything like that, but at the same time, like, the world of whiskey is so broad. Just get out there and find you some. And Doug, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours.
I can't thank you enough for inviting me on your show. I mean, like, it occurred to me at some point, like, wow, you're interviewing all your friends. When's my invitation coming? But then I figured, like, oh, no, we've got 3 guys, 1 grain. We don't need to do a solo episode. But I appreciate the hell out of this. And it's been a long time since I've shown up on somebody else's podcast and talked about my story, because we're always talking about the whiskey. It's always about the whiskey.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's people, this has always been, sorry to soapbox again, but this has always been about the community for me ever since the very beginning. Never drink if nobody knows you're drinking. Hang out in the Discord, talk to people, meet people, build the memories. It's all about the people. It's always about the people. But we influencers is the wrong word for I think what we do, but us podcasters, us whiskey media people, right? There are people with real stories behind that, and we don't get to hear it a whole lot. You get bits and pieces,
right?
That's the dopamine driving parasocial tease that we all do, intentionally or not, right. And then, honestly, Randall, we've just lost our audience, right? We've laid all our cards out on the table. There's no mystery anymore.
No, there's not.
we gave you the full cheat sheet. You don't have to listen to the entire backlog of the podcast to find out all these little factoids about us. Right. It's all here.
Right. Absolutely. But that's what makes it so cool is I'm speaking for you, but being fully transparent about everything that you do and just laying it all out there and be like, I don't know everything, but I'm going to give you the knowledge I do have, and we're going to work through this together. And if somebody rebukes me on it and says, no, that's not, you got that wrong, I am more than willing to take that comment and be like, okay, well, going forward, this is how we're going to do it. And I feel like that's how I need to be in, not only in this whiskey world, but in life in general. Like, take somebody's critique and be like, you know what? I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to use that, and I'm going to try to be a better person. Because it's all about us communicating as humans together which is weird, right? This is totally weird. Us even just talking together right now, like it's just totally a weird sentiment. But at the same time, like when you feel a vibe, you can jive on it, and then next thing you know, you turn in. We've got almost 2 hours in, so it's one of those things where it's like.
That's the thing. I almost think it's a superpower with me at some point. Like people always are like, I'll give you an hour. And then we talk for 2 hours. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's a job interview or running into somebody in a coffee shop or whatever. It's, I think it's an important quality of a podcast host to be someone that people want to talk to.
It really is.
And really you're winning when people like blow their own hard stop. I mean, I said I had a hard stop at 7:00. We're 15 after. When my doorbell rings, I'm going to have to run. So we should wrap before that happens.
Absolutely. We're wrapping right now. We're wrapping right now. Doug, I love you so much. You're an awesome dude. You complete me. You make the three guys, you make the three guys turn into a thing, but also getting to hear your story. Cause I've heard Germ's story and it's great. And I love Germ to death, but like hearing your side and I've known you for a while and now we're getting to actually meet together. And like, we're fixing to come up on our 1 year of Three Guys, which is super cool. Big summer blowout on that one. But like it's
and
really,
we're just along for like let's give Germ his flowers. That thing wouldn't exist without Germ suggesting it.
And that is possibly my highlight of the month. I'm not gonna lie, it really is. Like just hanging out with you guys and having a dram and just BSing and talking crap on people and stuff like that.
It's the weirdest whiskey club, right? Because like my local whiskey club, you got to bring bottles out of your house and go somewhere. And like us three guys live on different corners of the country, and we get together once a month and drink our own whiskey with each other. But the hilarious thing is we've got like, I don't know, 30 to 50% of our collections are basically the same as each other. So we've always got the same thing to drink.
We can make it work. We can make it work for sure. All right, Doug, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will have all of his. Go ahead.
I've got your whiskey in your glass. I mean, I've got the Yamazaki 12 still in your glass. I've got a whiskey to sign off with.
I don't.
What I always do on my show is I try to put whiskey in my brand's glass and cheers out. So I got to do it with yours because this is yours.
So I'm going to do, I don't have your glass because remember what we said. So I'm going to do a stemmed Copita with some Yamazaki.
Nice.
And
Fantastic.
I will salute you and say thank you so much for hanging out with me. It has been a blast. I will have all of your links down below. And y'all be good. Make sure you drink water. It's only 75 degrees outside, but still, drink water. And until next time, be blessed and rip 'em and sip 'em.
Cheers.